Welcome to Almost Here, Round the Corner Future Technology podcast with Richard Jacobs. Future technologies poised to transform our lives for better or worse are the focus of this podcast. Almost here means these technologies are now here and starting to be used, or just around the corner, from Bitcoin to artificial intelligence, 3D printing, blockchain, virtual reality, and more. Hello, this is Richard Jacobs with the Future Tech Podcast. My guest today is Shivani Rao. She's an applied researcher in the machine learning and learning relevance group at LinkedIn. So, Shivani, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Yeah, tell me, I didn't know that, I guess all the big companies are doing AI. So, LinkedIn, how is LinkedIn using AI? What kind of projects are you working on there?
LinkedIn has been, I think, one of the pioneers of AI and machine learning ever since the early days of LinkedIn. It's one of the truest data-driven companies that I have ever worked with or worked in. It's because every single product, every single feature, every single decision that's made involves data. And when you have large amount of data, when you have a good infrastructure, then you have all the data that you can use to play around with the data, come up with models. LinkedIn has always prided in being the pioneer, even in the data pipelines that they have built to support all the machine learning and AI algorithms that they use for their site for recommendations. So primarily the AI algorithms have centered around recommendations. So if you land on a job site in LinkedIn, you get recommendations of jobs that are relevant to you based on your skills and your activity on LinkedIn. If you arrive on the feed, what you see on the feed is also personalized. If you visit someone's profile on the right rail, you will see some courses which are coming from LinkedIn Learning Relevance Group. Those are also personalized. So personalization is the key. I think the other aspect is also search, which requires a lot of AI in of itself. So overall, those have been the main areas in which LinkedIn has, been a pioneer ever since early days and continues to be. Yeah.
So what have you noticed that the personalization does? What kind of comments have you gotten from users, or what kind of behaviors that are different?
I think that also, is an interesting question because personalization it requires data. So if you are a user who has not been on LinkedIn very active, you haven't clicked on a lot of posts, you haven't engaged with the job postings, you haven't engaged with other, you don't have a huge network that you can connect to, then your recommendations can be based off of, a cohort kind of recommendation. That means it averages the recommendations based on the cohort you belong to. If you're an engineer, then you get those kind of recommendations. So personalization it changes depending on how much activity somebody has. And I think one of the things that kind of comments we have received, and it's an area of growth, is seniority. So let's take an example of a job posting, right? So if I'm a CEO of a company and I get a job recommendation of an internship at a company, that can be quite insulting. So when those kind of things happen, we get a feedback ourselves, and this happens with course recommendations as well. So I could be an expert in machine learning, and I could get a course recommendation saying, begin your career in data science or something like that, course recommendation, right? And that can feel, oh wow, this algorithm doesn't really know how good I'm at it. They know that this is something of interest to me, which is good, but they also need to know how well I am on it, how well versed I am with that particular topic, which may or may not be available to us based on the activity that someone has on LinkedIn. So that's one of the challenges, I guess, in terms of the comments we receive from people about recommendations.
Well, do you tell users the more you fill out your profile, the more you interact, the better the recommendations we can give to you?
Yes, definitely. But a lot of people, some people use LinkedIn periodically on a regular basis, and some people are very aperiodic, as in when they want to search for a job is when they come on LinkedIn, or when they want to post a job as a recruiter or something else, that's when they engage with LinkedIn. Or they don't work well, they don't understand the value of the network that LinkedIn network brings to their personalization, their experience on LinkedIn. And as long as once people see the value of it, then they get hooked. But then till then, these are some of the pitfalls of the recommendations, and which is not to say that they're not of value. And sometimes when we get those comments, we take them seriously. We have come up with solutions to address the seniority problem. But these are just some of the examples of the comments we receive. Sometimes we receive great comments like, "Wow, how did you know that this is what I wanted to do?" And so that's saying a lot as well. That the more data we have, we can give good recommendations as well. Yeah.
So how do you speed the onboarding and the learning of a particular person and customize results for them?
For the LinkedIn Learning product, which is the learning product of LinkedIn, which is where my work comes into play, when users are onboarded onto LinkedIn Learning, they are allowed to choose skills that they want to follow. And these skills could be ranging from meditation, soft skills like management or leadership, to hard skills like C++ or Python or Scala or MapReduce. And so once the users have some skills that they want to follow, that can be used for recommendations because courses do map to the skill space. But at the same time, if the user that comes on LinkedIn Learning has had prior activity on LinkedIn feed, on the jobs, then we use that information in our model to kind of preload the recommendations while they are still doing the onboarding process and adding new skills, which are then incorporated later into later versions of the recommendations. But the onboarding process allows users to pick skills they're interested in learning.
What if I'm a recruiter and I want to get the right candidates? Do I have to just pay to advertise, or can I slowly interact with them as well?
If you're a recruiter and you're looking for the right candidates, there is a tool called Recruiter Search, Recruiter Search that LinkedIn provides, where a recruiter can come and put a job posting, select a couple of ideal candidates for the job posting, which is which is not hard to find. If you think about it, if you're working in a company, you have, you already have engineers that look like the ideal people you'd want to hire. So you can give that as an example. Hey, this is a job posting. Here are some of the people that are ideal candidates because they already work in my company, but I want people similar to that. So it's called a Sim Profiles product, and you can figure out who are the similar users to a given user, and that gets you as close as possible to the ideal candidates. And that's a different algorithm altogether. That's not a part of the LinkedIn relevance group, a learning relevance group. It's a part of the LinkedIn, people search, recruiter search group. It also involves AI algorithms heavily, but it's not purview of my work.
Yeah, on LinkedIn, I have a profile and I get job recommendations periodically, but I don't see that they explain why I'm getting the job recommendation or why they think it might be good for me. So maybe that's a feature to add. It's good if you recommend the right jobs, but it may be a better step if you say, hey, we recommended ABC company because you said you have this skill or whatever.
Yeah, actually, that's a very valuable feedback. And in fact, if you go to the LinkedIn Learning page, the courses are organized as carousels, just like you have the Netflix style where you have grid of movie titles. It's similar to that. You have a grid of course titles. And for each carousel, which is each horizontal row, we have a reason why that course was recommended. And we have done A/B testing to prove that those actually improve the quality of the experience for the users as well as engagement. So yes, definitely valuable. And within LinkedIn Learning Relevance Group, where we make course recommendations, we do use annotations, which we call annotations here, as reasons why those courses are recommended to the users.
And as they say, actions are louder than words. So
yeah,
I can see if I read articles about, AI, let's say, and I read articles about data science and I follow people related to that and I'm linked up with people in that area, that would help tell you what kind of content to send me or job offers, right?
Exactly. There are two ways in which we can make recommendations, and in the world of recommendations, literature, there are two types of algorithms. One is called cold start, where you don't have much activity data of a person. Say you're a new user and you don't have much activity, you haven't followed many people. So there we use skill-based mapping. That means based on the skills you have specified in your profile, we use the skills to match to the closest jobs or closest courses or closest articles or people to follow based on the skills alone. And of course, that can be limiting, right? Because the skills alone will not cover, like you said, actions speak louder than words. Even the skills that someone may be interested in could be aspirational and not really something that they engage with or work on every day. So that's definitely deficient, but it's the best you have when you have no other information. But as the model collects data, we call it the warm start problem, or problem where we actually have activity information to infer. And there are a bunch of algorithms that we can use called collaborative filtering, content-based filtering, supervised approaches, learn to rank approaches to make those recommendations more valuable based on the activity data. Yeah.
Do you find that employers value the data in the LinkedIn profile above and beyond that of a resume or in addition to a resume? Does it tell them anything?
Yeah, I think it's both. I myself, some sit on some interview panels at LinkedIn when I'm hiring, candidates for the LinkedIn relevance group, and definitely the LinkedIn profile matters a lot. It has become sort of the what do you say? Like the driver's license, like you're legit. If you're legit, you have a LinkedIn profile, and most likely people who are actually interested in job offers or like who are actively interviewing will always try to keep the resume updated as well as the LinkedIn profile updated. Most of the time, I find that LinkedIn profile is more updated than the resume because often it can detect the change in your network, the change in your activity, and make recommendations. Like, looks like you're no longer at this company anymore. Things like that. Sometimes people use their work email addresses to sign up on LinkedIn, and so that changes as well, and that also allows to detect that somebody has changed companies. So sometimes LinkedIn profiles are more accurate and up to date than even the resume itself.
Well, what happens if if you're going through a transition, you lose a job and you're a data scientist and you want to find another one? Do you guys look for that kind of thing? If someone posts it and show them, try to help them get back into work, or?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's a lot of activities that happen along that. One is, of course, from the recommendation engine itself. There is two types of algorithms we have where we make those job recommendations. One, we call them as passive job seekers versus active job seekers. So active job seekers are people who are visiting these job sites and applying to jobs all the time, left, right, and center. They are contacting recruiters, sending messages back and forth. These are active job seekers. But there are a lot of people who are passive job seekers as well, who are mostly surfing around, and they'll only engage if the opportunity is pretty active. And we have an algorithm that infers whether you're an active or a passive job seeker. And there's also a tool or a feature on the LinkedIn profile page when you create your profile where you can automatically send updates about your profile with a short note and what titles you're looking for to recruiters. And so your profile is more surface faster through those searches. From the recruiter's perspective, if you're actually actively seeking, without affecting your current employers, whether you're employed or planning to leave, or you've already left, or you're like you say looking for a transition. All of those things you don't want your current employer to know that you're looking for another job. So it hides that notification from the recruiters of your own company, but then it'll inform the recruiters of the other company wherever there's a match. So there are those features that exist. That's one part of it. But LinkedIn also has an outreach program where in the libraries, people who are in career transition can come in and get consultation on the LinkedIn resume and learn about how their profile can be made better. So that they are more suitable for change. So often what happens is when someone is looking for a career transition or looking to change their jobs or make a major change, their network is not in that new domain. They don't have enough of network, and so their profile lacks the keywords and the terms required to bubble up their profile in the searches from the recruiters. So what we do is we teach them how to find these ideal profiles on LinkedIn and then learn what keywords exist in those profiles, what skill set these people have that the ideal person that they want to look like, their profile to look like. And then we teach them how to crowdsource this information for themselves and then find what skills they themselves need to acquire in order to be able to match up to the people that they want to become like in that ladder. So, yeah.
It sounds like LinkedIn, I guess it's always the case, right? If you use it and you use a lot of the features, LinkedIn sounds like could be a huge help to recruiters and to people looking for a job.
Exactly. And I think a lot of those features are undiscovered. A lot of people just look at and play around on the feed, and the feed is very professional, very tech-oriented. I can say that because I'm a tech worker, so when I see my feed, it's very personalized to me, and it's very relevant. I learn a lot about the latest happening in my field. So sometimes people just do that and come back. But if you were to use all the features, it's pretty powerful. Yeah.
Well, I guess then, again, I'm just making this up on the fly, but, I'm not a power user of LinkedIn, but I use it. But it would be nice if those suggestions were pushed to me. I may log in and I'll see news and that's wonderful, but what if, how do I know that all these features are there? Like one thing I could see is the AI would surface certain features and test it out on me. Hey, if you're looking for a job, if you do these 3 things or you click here, we can help you. Or, hey, If you're looking for more visibility or what, like it seems like a job of the AI would be to push suggestions of those things to users to get them to engage more and to help them.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. And I think there's a balance there too. There's a balance being a healthy nudging and being annoying, an annoying grandma. And I don't know if you remember, but like a few years ago, there was a joke about LinkedIn sending emails to people about these recommendations and nudging them. And this was pre-mobile world, right? Like a few years ago, before the mobile thing had really taken off. And there was a joke on SNL saying LinkedIn stop sending me emails. And so we know that there's a boundary to be like there's a balance between nudging in the right direction with new feature updates to the point of annoyance versus just awareness. The recommendations do appear on LinkedIn. For example, if you visit a job site, like a job site, on the right rail, you will see some course recommendations which would be crucial for interviewing for that job, for example. But a lot of people don't take notice of that. And those recommendations are themselves valuable, but pushing notifications that is something personally as well. I've turned off my own notifications on all my apps, and I don't want annoyance. I want to be able to use it as utility, but not as annoyance. So as someone who's also making these algorithms, I'm not in control of when those are pushed, but we do have an algorithm team. We have actually a machine learning algorithm team that figures out what is the ideal cadence of pushing these notifications to different users based on their tolerance level. So we use feedback mechanisms like complaint rate, unsubscribe rate to learn the user's tolerance to these push notifications. And so if you don't get that many, maybe you have in the past unsubscribed or complained in some way about those recommendations, and then this is used as a feedback in the model and used to reduce the number of recommendations you've sent. On the other hand, if people actually actively engage with all the notifications that they're pushed, then there's a high chance that there'll be more recommendations sent their way about different features. So yeah, there is science behind that at LinkedIn as well. Yeah.
How do people perceive LinkedIn? Do they just perceive it as if you need a job, it's a good place to look for one, or is it just a networking one? Like, what aspects of LinkedIn do people tend to use the most, and which ones do they not use, and which ones do they not use that they should use because it would be helpful to them?
I think it's the jobs and the people marketplace essentially. So on one side, we get a lot of enterprises signing up for the recruiter product where they actually can now use a network to hire candidates. So that's the biggest revenue source at LinkedIn, because that becomes the bread and butter for several companies to be able to get candidates through the network of the people. And mostly the network belongs to the network of the employees they have. Can you refer a friend, and things like that. Apart from that, there's also obviously the profile building and brand building. A lot of people use LinkedIn as a way to create a brand awareness about who they are and what they do on a day-to-day basis. I myself use LinkedIn to advertise my talks, upcoming talks, or certain articles that I've published, things like that. So from a professional perspective, LinkedIn can be used as a brand awareness. There's also a product called LinkedIn Pro Finder, which allows you to find experts on a certain topic and pay them by the hour for their experience. It could be tax, it could be accounting. Awesome. Yeah, so LinkedIn has that as well because it can identify who the experts are. So yeah, I think the primary users have been the recruiters as well as the job seekers. That has been the primary dynamic at LinkedIn.
Oh wow, very cool.
Yeah.
So what do you think you're in charge of implementing the AI areas? You want to personalize their feed, et cetera. Show them the right jobs. What else is on the board for you guys to implement with AI? What else have you thought up that would be very helpful to people?
Yeah, a lot of things along those lines. I mean, I'm myself particularly within the realm of all the possible relevance products is I'm working on learning relevance, which is making course recommendations for the LinkedIn Learning product. And so that falls under the category of education technology, where learners can come and continue to grow their career, continue to supplement their education from schooling with the material online. And LinkedIn Learning came about from lynda.com, which was a company that was brought by LinkedIn in April 2015. And it hosts a bunch of courses in different categories like businesses or creative or technology kind of libraries in 5 to 6 different languages. So, and it's really an on the go. It's 2-hour short or long courses. And it's a quick overview as opposed to sitting through a whole course with some of the other competing education platforms. So I think within this subcategory of education technology, finding out how to do skill assessments so that people who are actually supplementing their education by going online and being self-taught, how can they actually find the jobs they like through by being self-made people. And so that's the question that that I mostly dapple with. Yeah, I don't have a fancy college degree, but I have been completely self-taught, and I can really write code for machine learning. I can implement any machine learning algorithm, but no company will hire me because I don't have a fancy degree from a fancy university.
Right.
Is there something that we can do through the online education platform and assessments that allow us to say, okay, you have taken these courses on LinkedIn Learning, you have this background, and you say you've done these courses through your certifications. Can we do a skill assessment and say you know these things, so you're now eligible to be a machine learning engineer by being a self-made person and not by being someone who got a fancy degree. How can AI facilitate that? Is one of the questions we're asking.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
Have you seen some companies that are using LinkedIn exclusively or majorly for all their recruiting, or how would you compare companies using Indeed or Monster.com or something like that versus companies that are using LinkedIn? Is a big goal of yours to be able to attract companies and give them better tools?
Exactly, and I think this comes down to the power of network. We have a crazy amount of network data, which a lot of our competitors lack. They're mostly a flat structure. So if you apply for a job and you got a job at Microsoft, for example, right, and a recruiter at Microsoft wants to hire someone like you, there is no way for them to literally search for people like you because they don't have any network data. So if I was a recruiter at a company, I would actually pick LinkedIn because then I have the network information, which becomes very valuable. People who are engineers over time hang out with other engineers. And can recommend and know. And the community is so small in those sub areas of engineering is that you would probably run cross paths with the same people over and over again in a period of your career. So it becomes really, really important to attract talent through the network as opposed to just having a very flat structure without that network connection.
Yeah, I didn't. Well, I don't know why. It's to be obvious, but I didn't think about that. LinkedIn does have tons of network data. So, without giving away secret sauce, I mean, what does the network data tell you? What kinds of things do you see that no one else sees?
So, network data is essentially an economic graph. We call it here. It's called the economic graph, where the nodes can be people. It can be companies, it can be jobs, it can be universities, and the edges shows a connection. And so there's a lot of information that we can derive, and we publish something called as a workplace report once a year, where we figure out what are the trending skills geographically. So we can say, oh yeah, Dallas has these skills coming up. DC has those skills more important. And we already know that by intuition, but having data support that is very valuable. We also can look at transitions, so we can figure out from a person's profile. Say, for example, I'm a researcher. So then, based on the title I have, what's the most likely next title I will have? And that also is pretty valuable to figure out where the career direction for a particular person is. Yes, there is always the law of averages, and you may be ruling out people who want to make career transitions, but more or less you will have a general idea of which direction someone's career is headed. And also, you can also do migration analysis. For example, you will see that when a company, especially in the tech field, you see this a lot when some companies not doing very well or has laid off a bunch of employees. You'll find migratory patterns between the people that leave that company and go to another company. You will find a migratory pattern. It won't be like they all just scatter around and go to every other company. There'll be another company that will probably go, looking to hire, and you'll have a lot of people migrating from this company X, which is laying off people, to company Y that's hiring people. You can predict these things as well.
Very interesting.
Yeah, definitely.
And what about on the individual basis? When you see someone has a network of people, what happens if they, again, change jobs or industries, or they want to change jobs or industries? Are they kind of stuck? Because let's say, I'm in programming and I want to be an artist instead. All my network is programmers and all that. What do I do to change over, or what happens when someone changes over?
I think that's definitely one of the problems as well. Like that, the pros of a network is that yes, you can really harness the power, but sometimes you may have a network that's more it's limiting than actually expansive. So for that, what I usually recommend to people is that to go and meet more people at events, tech events. It could be, like you said, for an artist event, maybe go to art galleries or art exhibitions or go to an art class, make friends there and add them on LinkedIn and grow your network manually, in the beginning at least. And then over time, you might automatically run into people. We have a product called People You May Know, and you may get those recommendations on your site. When you land on the LinkedIn feed, on the right hand side on the top, you'll see, do you know these people? And sometimes you know these people at least by face, because you have seen them at events, you have seen them in other companies, or you've seen them at, like, say, someone who wants to be an artist, they've probably seen them in an art exhibition, and say, wait, I remember that person, I've seen that person, let me add them on LinkedIn. So over time, you would get more recommendations that will allow you to grow that naturally. But in the beginning, it would be best to go to events and network, person to person, and then actually add them on the LinkedIn profile. I'll add them to your LinkedIn network at the event.
Okay, makes sense. What are some of the the new ideas you're working on? What are we going to see from LinkedIn in the near future?
LinkedIn has it has been going more into a direction of something similar that we have seen in other companies. It's called AI first. That means we're trying to make sure that everybody at LinkedIn is equipped with the knowledge to build AI products, no matter who they are. They don't have to be relevant engineers or PhDs in machine learning in order to be able to build it. But some basic understanding of what machine learning looks like, how can they build models within their own domain of problems that they're solving. So that's something that's happening within LinkedIn. But also, some of the newest things include, at least I can speak for an education technology, as things like learning assistant. So think about this. Let's say I'm preparing for interviews, right? I have taken a bunch of courses. Now, it would be great for me to get a question a day from a learning assistant or from somebody who's trying to help me prepare for the interview and saying, hey, here's your question for the day. Can you answer it? What if I ask you this question in the interview? You usually have people mock interviews for you. So that could be something that would be really fun for LinkedIn to have in the education technology space. There's also a lot of chatbots, work-along chatbots that are happening where you can engage with the LinkedIn ecosystem and allow it to guide you. And this doesn't have to be something that works only within an interface. It can be through voice interface and things like that. So you can actually talk to LinkedIn and say, hey, can you find me jobs? Or what's the top job for today? Or what's the top company to follow? Or I'm going for an interview with this company. Can you give me some news and updates about this company so that I don't look like a fool at the interview? So things like that also are very valuable for people who are engaged, who are using LinkedIn or relying on LinkedIn to find jobs. And we'll hopefully have those coming out soon.
Well, you can see the question a day could help you with learning how to interview. If you gave questions that interviewers tend to ask, it could help you with, let's say you took a course on, machine learning. And if you get one question a day about it, it keeps you fresh and sharp, so you don't forget what you learned. So I guess that'd be a great reminder, and it's a nice bite-sized way to learn more stuff,
Exactly. And we already have an algorithm that detects bite-sized videos. So we have learned that learning is a dirty process, learning is a cumbersome process, and the more we make it easier for learners to learn, the better it is. So what we have come up with is a way to even make it shorter than a whole course content. Like people probably go to universities for 4 years to learn what they need to learn. Some people take a whole semester of course on Coursera or other learning platforms. But what we want to make is learning as a habit on a day-to-day basis. And so what we do is for example, have a course content with 20 videos. Which of those 20 videos can be recommended as a bite video on a daily basis, or randomly to a user who's interested in those bites, and how can we match them for whatever they're asking? It could be through a question that we can mine from the search logs, or it could be something that actually matches with the skill that a person is interested in. So those are some of the things that we already are underway, and that is speaking to your point about bite-sized content. Bite-sized content is extremely powerful. Even if you spend 2 minutes a day learning about one thing by looking at one video on LinkedIn Learning, it would just totally add up over a year for the field of expertise. So,
that's pretty cool. I really like that. That's great.
Yeah. Thank
you.
So
Just one or two more questions. The people that are on LinkedIn every day, the people that you love, the power users, what are they doing versus the people that are there just occasionally? Have you identified, are they just like in active job search mode, or are they doing other things that make them go on LinkedIn often?
Like I said, I think in LinkedIn, people are coming to LinkedIn as mainly two types. One are the kind of people that engage on an everyday basis. They love the feed, they love staying in touch with their network. And there's another group of people that come aperiodically when they're doing a job search. So when I'm doing a job search, I'll engage heavily with LinkedIn because I'm talking to recruiters, I'm updating my profile, so I'm appearing more in searches, and I'm pinging my network to help me. And when the job is done, when I have a job offer, I just disappear for again days till the next time I have to search for jobs. There are people like that as well. And then there are people who will occasionally log in on a weekend for 5 minutes or so, which is again sounds like healthy to me, but they're not engaging a whole lot. But they do have some engagement over a really long period of time. So there are different categories of users, and our recommendation algorithm takes that into account. Yeah.
Well, very good. Well, this is, I didn't realize LinkedIn can do all these great things. So, this will be instructive for listeners, no matter what they do. Everyone's got to work to live. So, it's really great. I'm glad to hear about this stuff. But what's the best way to get in touch with you? Probably through LinkedIn or to ask questions, suggest ideas?
Yeah, absolutely. I love engaging. One of the things that I have done for my own career is, apart from writing code and developing models, I try to engage with the larger technical community. So I try to publish my work once a year, speak at outreach events, speak at different events. So if you want to look up more about me, you can visit shivanirao.info. So that's my full name .info, and you'll have the latest news about my talks, my outreach activities, my volunteering services with the research community, as well as my Twitter handle, as well as an email address if you want to reach me. My resume is also up there. So everything you want to know about me is on my website. Yeah.
That's great, Shivani. Thanks so much for coming. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Rich. Thank you.
You have been listening to Almost Here, Around the Corner Future Technology podcast with Richard Jacobs. Subscribe to this podcast, post a review to discover more future technologies that are poised to transform our lives for better or worse, such as Bitcoin, artificial intelligence, 3D printing, blockchain, virtual reality, and more.